You know what's funny? People think power is loud. They think it's in arguments, revenge, proving a point, or making sure everyone knows they've been wronged. But the strongest shift you'll ever make is completely silent. No threats, no explanations, no desperate attempts to be understood. Just a quiet change in how you carry yourself. And suddenly, the same people who ignored you start paying attention. The same people who took you for granted start questioning themselves. Because nothing unsettles people more than realizing the version of you they were comfortable disrespecting no longer exists. People have a strange relationship with silence. Most of them don't know what to do with it. The moment a conversation becomes uncomfortable, they rush to fill the empty space with excuses, explanations, opinions, or noise. They want immediate answers because answers make them feel in control. They want reactions because reactions make them feel important. They want to know exactly what you're thinking, exactly how you feel, and exactly where they stand with you. The funny thing is, the moment you stop giving them all of that, something begins to happen inside their minds. A quiet question starts growing. Curiosity takes its place where certainty used to live. When people become used to having access to you, they stop valuing that access. When they know you'll always explain yourself, they'll stop listening carefully. When they know you'll always defend yourself, they'll stop questioning their own behavior. When they know you'll always come back, they'll stop respecting the possibility of losing you. Predictability makes people comfortable, and comfort often makes them careless. They become confident that no matter what they say or do, they already know your next move. Then one day the script changes. You don't argue, you don't chase, you don't beg to be understood. You don't spend hours proving your intentions to people who have already decided what they want to believe. You simply become quiet, not because you're weak, not because you've accepted defeat, not because you have nothing to say, because you've realized that some people learn more from your silence than they ever would from your words. That silence begins to create something powerful. It creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is something most people cannot tolerate for very long. The same people who never cared about your opinions suddenly wonder what you're thinking. The same people who ignored your presence begin noticing your absence. The same people who dismissed your value start replaying old conversations in their minds, searching for answers you never gave them. Human beings are naturally curious creatures. They can ignore what is obvious, but they become obsessed with what they cannot fully understand. Give them every detail and they lose interest. Leave a few pages missing from the story and suddenly they can't stop thinking about it. Silence turns you into a question mark in a world full of explanations. It removes the certainty people once relied on and replaces it with mystery. The interesting part is that silence doesn't actually change who you are. It changes how people perceive you. The moment you stop reacting the way they expect, they are forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. They begin wondering whether they misjudged you. They begin questioning whether they pushed too far. They begin asking themselves whether they took your patience for weakness. Those questions become louder than any speech you could have given. Many people believe power comes from speaking the loudest in the room. They think strength is measured by how quickly they can respond, how aggressively they can defend themselves, or how effectively they can win an argument. But there is another kind of power, a quieter kind. A power that sits comfortably in silence while everyone else scrambles to make sense of it. A power that understands not every accusation deserves a response, not every misunderstanding deserves clarification, and not every person deserves unlimited access to your thoughts. Because when words disappear, imagination takes over, and imagination can create questions that no argument can erase. The less you explain yourself to those determined to misunderstand you, the more they are left alone with their own assumptions. The less you react to disrespect, the more people are forced to examine why they expected a reaction in the first place. The less attention you give to those seeking control over your emotions, the more they realize that control is slipping through their fingers. Most people don't decide your value by listening to what you say about yourself. They decide it by watching what you tolerate. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes to talk about. You can tell the world that you deserve respect. You can repeat it every day. You can post quotes about confidence and strength. But if you continue accepting disrespect, excuses, manipulation, and mistreatment, people will believe your actions long before they believe your words. Human beings are observant in strange ways. They notice boundaries more than speeches. They notice standards more than promises. They notice what you allow more than what you demand. The strange thing about respect is that it doesn't begin in the minds of other people. It begins in your own. The moment you start seeing yourself differently, the entire dynamic changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because you stop participating in situations that require you to beg for basic decency. You stop negotiating your worth with people who only appreciate what they can control. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stop treating your presence like something that should be earned by everyone except you. For a long time, some people benefit from the version of you that constantly forgives without accountability. They benefit from the version of you that stays silent when hurt, accepts less than deserved, and keeps giving chances without seeing change. They become comfortable with that arrangement. They start believing it will never change. They mistake your patience for weakness. They mistake your kindness for dependency. They mistake your understanding for permission. Then something shifts, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough. You stop explaining why certain behavior hurts you. You stop writing long messages trying to make people understand what they already understand. You stop chasing after people who keep walking away. You stop trying to convince others to treat you properly. Instead, you begin making decisions that reflect how you see yourself. And that's when people start reacting differently. It's fascinating how quickly behavior changes when access is no longer guaranteed. The people who ignored your boundaries suddenly notice them. The people who rarely valued your time suddenly become aware of it. The people who assumed you would always be available begin questioning that assumption. Not because they have become different people overnight, but because your self-respect has changed the rules of engagement. Many individuals enjoy the benefits of someone who lacks boundaries. They enjoy the convenience. They enjoy the predictability. They enjoy knowing that no matter what they do, the consequences will be minimal. But self-respect introduces consequences, not through revenge, not through hostility, through distance, through standards, through the quiet refusal to participate in situations that diminish your dignity. What makes this powerful is that it doesn't require conflict. People expect resistance to look aggressive. They expect strength to be loud. They expect confidence to announce itself. Yet the strongest form of self-respect often appears calm. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need approval. It simply changes behavior. It walks away from disrespect without delivering a speech. It stops investing energy where value is not recognized. It chooses peace over proving a point. And that decision creates discomfort for those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Suddenly, they can no longer rely on old patterns. Suddenly, the version of you they understood becomes unfamiliar. Suddenly, their actions produce consequences they never expected. The person they once took for granted begins carrying themselves differently. The person they assumed would always stay begins demonstrating that staying was a choice, not an obligation. People often wonder why certain individuals command respect without saying much. It isn't because they are feared. It isn't because they are louder. It isn't because they demand attention. It's because they have developed a relationship with themselves that others can clearly see. They understand their worth without needing constant validation. They protect their peace without apologizing for it. They value their time, energy, and presence enough to remove them from places where they are consistently undervalued. Because the moment you start respecting yourself, people are forced to make a decision. Either they rise to meet the standard you've set, or they become uncomfortable with the fact that the old version of you is no longer available to them. People rarely understand the value of something while it is constantly available to them. It's one of the strangest habits of human nature. The closer something is, the less attention it receives. The more reliable it becomes, the more invisible it seems. A person can spend years showing loyalty, support, patience, and care, only to watch those qualities treated like ordinary background noise. Not because they have no value, but because familiarity has convinced others that they will always be there. Most people don't wake up one morning and decide to take someone for granted. It happens slowly. It happens through repetition. They become accustomed to your presence. They become comfortable with your effort. They expect your understanding. They assume your forgiveness. Eventually, what was once appreciated becomes expected. What was once respected becomes overlooked. What was once valued becomes ordinary. And that's where the illusion begins. The illusion that you'll always stay. The illusion that you'll always be available. The illusion that no matter how little appreciation is shown, your presence is permanent. People often become careless when they believe there is no risk of loss. Why protect something that isn't going anywhere? Why express gratitude for something that will still be there tomorrow? Why reflect on your behavior when there are no consequences attached to it? Certainty creates comfort, and comfort has a way of putting respect to sleep. Then one day the certainty disappears, not with an explosion, not with dramatic speeches, not with threats or revenge, just absence, a quiet absence. An empty space where your energy used to exist, a silence where your attention once lived, a distance where your effort once reached. And suddenly people notice things they ignored for years. Human beings are experts at adapting to presence. They are far less skilled at adapting to absence. Presence becomes routine, absence becomes impossible to ignore. The conversations change, the atmosphere changes. The familiar patterns break apart. People start recognizing the contributions they never acknowledged, because those contributions are no longer available. The things they once considered ordinary begin revealing their true importance. What's fascinating is that absence doesn't argue its value. It doesn't defend itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply allows reality to become visible. Sometimes people only understand what someone brought into their lives when they experience life without it. The support they overlooked, the patience they underestimated, the loyalty they assumed was guaranteed, the understanding they rarely appreciated. The mind has a strange tendency to focus on what it no longer has access to. When something disappears, attention naturally follows it. Questions begin forming. Memories become sharper. Conversations are replayed. Decisions are reconsidered. Actions are examined from different angles. The same person who seemed easy to ignore becomes difficult to stop thinking about. That isn't because absence creates value. The value was already there. Absence simply removes the distraction that prevented people from seeing it. For many individuals, your constant availability hides your significance. They become so used to receiving your time that they forget time is valuable. They become so used to receiving your effort that they forget effort requires energy. They become so used to receiving your understanding that they forget understanding is a gift, not an obligation. Once those things disappear, reality becomes impossible to avoid. The irony is that people often chase what they neglected. The moment access becomes limited, appreciation begins to grow. The moment certainty disappears, attention increases. The moment your presence is no longer guaranteed, your value becomes clearer. Not because you changed overnight, but because the distance forced people to see what comfort had hidden. There is something deeply unsettling about realizing that someone you underestimated had more influence on your life than you admitted. It's an uncomfortable realization. It forces reflection. It forces honesty. It forces people to confront the possibility that they misjudged someone who quietly contributed more than they ever recognized. And while some people spend their lives trying to prove their worth through endless explanations, there is another approach. A quieter one, a more unsettling one. Instead of convincing others of your value, you allow them to experience its absence. Instead of demanding appreciation, you remove what was being taken for granted. Instead of fighting to be recognized, you step back and let the empty space speak for itself, because an empty chair is often noticed more than the person who sat in it every day. A missing voice can become louder than a voice that was always available. A closed door can attract more attention than one that never stopped opening. The moment people can no longer reach what they assumed would always be within reach, the true weight of its importance begins settling into their minds. Most people are obsessed with reactions. They want to see anger. They want to see frustration. They want to see you break, complain, argue, or prove something. There is a strange satisfaction some people get from knowing they can affect your emotions. It gives them a sense of influence, a sense of importance, a sense of control. The moment they know they can push a button and get a predictable response, they feel powerful. They know exactly where the strings are attached, and they pull them whenever they feel like it. That's why so many people spend their lives fighting battles they never needed to fight. They react to every insult. They answer every criticism. They defend themselves against every accusation. They chase every misunderstanding. They waste enormous amounts of energy trying to convince people who have already made up their minds. And the funny thing is, most of those battles don't change anything. The people who wanted a reaction get one. The people looking for drama receive entertainment. The people seeking control receive confirmation that they still have access to your emotions. Then something unusual happens. You stop playing, not because you've given up, not because you're afraid, because you've discovered something far more powerful than winning an argument. Growth. Real growth is unsettling to people because it cannot be manipulated easily. Anger can be manipulated. Insecurity can be manipulated. Desperation can be manipulated. But growth changes the entire game. Growth removes the need to participate in situations that once consumed you. Growth teaches you that not every challenge deserves your attention. Growth teaches you that peace is more valuable than being right in front of people determined to misunderstand you. The people around you often expect the same version of you forever. They build their expectations around old patterns. They remember how you reacted yesterday and assume you'll react the same way tomorrow. They remember the version of you that tolerated disrespect, over-explained everything, sought approval, or carried the burden of everyone's opinions. Those expectations become comfortable, predictable, reliable. Then growth arrives and quietly destroys those expectations. The insult that once ruined your day barely gets your attention. The criticism that once kept you awake no longer follows you home. The rejection that once shattered your confidence becomes a lesson instead of a wound. The opinion that once controlled your emotions loses its authority. People notice these changes more than you think. Not because you're announcing them, but because your behavior begins speaking a different language. The things that once triggered you no longer produce the same results. The situations that once drained you no longer have the same access. The individuals who once expected unlimited emotional reactions suddenly find themselves standing in front of someone they don't fully understand anymore. And that creates confusion. Confusion is powerful because it forces people to rethink their assumptions. They start wondering what changed. They start comparing the old version of you to the new one. They start noticing that the tools they once used no longer work. The guilt no longer works. The pressure no longer works. The manipulation no longer works. The intimidation no longer works. The version of you they were comfortable controlling begins slipping beyond their reach. Many people think the strongest response is revenge. They imagine power as getting even. They imagine victory as making others suffer the way they suffered. But revenge keeps you connected to the very thing you're trying to escape. It keeps your attention trapped in the past. It keeps your energy focused on people who no longer deserve it. Growth does something different. Growth moves forward. It invests energy into becoming stronger rather than becoming bitter. It builds instead of destroys. It develops instead of obsesses. It creates a future instead of replaying old injuries. And there is something deeply unsettling about watching someone rise above situations that were supposed to break them. People expect damage, they expect resentment, they expect endless reactions. What they don't expect is transformation. They don't expect the person they underestimated to become calmer, wiser, more disciplined, and more confident because of the very challenges that were meant to hold them back. The greatest response is not proving people wrong through arguments. It is becoming so different from the version they once knew that their assumptions collapse under the weight of reality. It is allowing your actions to tell a story your words never needed to explain. It is walking forward with a level of self-control, purpose, and confidence that forces people to question everything they thought they knew about you.